Live from New York City's Jacob Javits Center, it's the 2017 Summer Fancy Food Show, starring a lot of fancy food. Experience the development of fancy food from the 1950s through the 2000s in this film. For example, this isn't fancy food, it's food made to look fancy. There was no fancy food in the Qin and Han dynasties in 221 BC. They had to cultivate everything. But they had fancy dishes to serve their food, which helped a bit. This party waited so long for their fancy food that they got up and left. She is still wondering when her fancy food will arrive. Still wondering. He waited so long for his fancy food that he decided to take a nap on the table. Fancy food didn't start to develop until after World War II. The 1950s brought a whole generation of men who traveled overseas during World War II. They returned home with memories of cultures and foods that they had never before experienced. Many formed companies so they could bring these fine foods to the U.S. market, where prosperity was turning the taste buds of Americans towards a more sophisticated direction. America also began to feel the influence of chefs that were members of the American Culinary Federation that was formed in 1929 in New York City. The early 1960s started a more hopeful time with a new era and new direction, with John F. Kennedy leading the way. The outlook of specialty food was very optimistic. The Fancy Food Show featured more than 9,000 products. Organizers figured there was a volume of about $150 million in business transactions that took place. Fancy food was showing a steady improvement by about 10 to 15% each year. The 1970s began about the same way the 1960s ended, in turmoil, from student protesters getting killed at Kent State University while the Vietnam War raged on. But we still had to eat, so the food world continued to evolve into a semi-gourmet feel. I want to know who came up with the bananas and ham and hollandaise. With the 1980s emerged a group calling themselves Yuppies, short for Young Urban Professionals. The influence of food and wine improved the taste buds of Americans as they began to demand more from their food experience. As the 1990s kicked in, there was a period of economic downturn which didn't impact the specialty food business, as consumers still wanted to have that special food so they could prepare the dishes at home. As we turned a century older, the 2000s consumer became more interested in where the food was coming from. Organic went mainstream as buzzwords like local and sustainable became lifestyle choices. The Summer Fancy Food Show took up the space of the equivalent of 6 football fields. There were over 180,000 specialty food products available to taste. Now this is fancy food. There were fancy foods from Greece, pre-packaged and ready to eat on the run. Shirella Klaus was there with her line of sparkling waters developed by local chefs in the Seattle area. She had 4 pregnancies and couldn't drink wine during her pregnancies, so this forced her to come up with a sparkling water she could enjoy with her dinners. Veggie Vita was there with another mother's way to get her kids to eat their vegetables. Quite ingenious, I would say, and also chef-inspired. So many countries were there, including Korea, Germany, Austria, and Italy, with their specialties balsamic vinegars. Our neighbor to the north was there, Canada. Mrs. Renfro's So Many Ways to Salsa was there, celebrating 77 years of salsa. Harmless Coconut Water was there, and the Jelly Belly guy is always there. 2 Italian guys were there with their homemade desserts called Sweetly. How many different names can a person come up with for Italy? I mean, you can't use Germany because sweet with Germany would be Swermany. It doesn't sound good. The Almond Stroop Waffle was there, a Dutch bakery started in 1909. You can enjoy it with coffee. Nielsen Massey vanillas and flavorings were there. It's a business that started back in 1907. From the Javits Center in New York City, thanks for watching. It's the Summer Fancy Food Show 2017 comes to a close.